My sister sent my boyfriend a photo that made it look like I was cheating on him. Then she sat across from me at my parents' dinner table and said she was only trying to protect him. When I confronted her, she smiled and said, "Why are you yelling at me? If it was innocent, what's the problem?" I stayed silent. That was 6 months ago. This morning, she showed up uninvited at his company's charity event. My sister photoshopped evidence that I was cheating, so I exposed her entire pattern to our family. The photo was real. That was the worst part. I was sitting across from a man at a restaurant, leaning toward him while he showed me something on his phone. What Vanessa cropped out were the 6 other people from my department sitting around the same table. It was a quarterly team dinner. The man was my new director showing us a video of his toddler trying to feed spaghetti to their dog. Vanessa took a normal picture, cut everyone else out, and sent it to Caleb with the message, "I don't know how to tell you this, but Emma has been lying to you." Caleb showed me every message she sent. My stomach dropped when I saw the photo because, for 2 seconds, even I looked guilty. My mother was sitting beside Vanessa at Sunday dinner when this all came out. She kept looking between us like she was trying to figure out which daughter was about to ruin the meal. My father finally asked why Vanessa had been messaging my boyfriend privately at all. She folded her arms and looked offended. Because someone had to look out for him. I stared at her thinking this was insane even for Vanessa. What I didn't know yet was that the fake cheating photo wasn't her plan. It was what she used after the first plan failed. Vanessa and I are 2 years apart. I'm 30, she's 28, and most of my childhood memories involve her turning ordinary things into competitions I didn't know I was participating in. When I was 10, my parents gave me a little silver digital camera for my birthday. I loved it. I spent the whole summer taking terrible pictures of our dog and making my friends pose in the backyard. Vanessa had never cared about cameras before. A week later, she told our parents she needed one too. Not the same one, a better one. She cried for 2 days until my dad gave in and bought her a newer model with more zoom. She used it maybe 3 weeks. Then it disappeared into a drawer. In high school, I joined the school newspaper because I liked writing. Vanessa had never shown interest, but the next semester she joined too. Within a month, she was telling people I only got better assignments because the faculty advisor liked me. When I got a summer internship during college, her first question wasn't where or what I'd be doing. She asked how much they were paying me. 2 weeks later, she applied to a different department at the same company. My parents called it sibling rivalry. I called it exhausting. I learned to work around it. I stopped telling Vanessa about things until they were already done. If I bought something I liked, I didn't mention the price. If I was excited about a new friend, I didn't talk about them too much. It wasn't because I thought she was evil. I just knew she had a way of making my happiness feel like a challenge she'd been issued. For years, that strategy mostly worked. We weren't close, but we could be in the same room without fighting. We texted on birthdays. We showed up for family dinners. If Vanessa made a comment about my job or clothes, I ignored it. Then I met Caleb. He was 32, a structural engineer, and the least dramatic person I'd ever dated. He didn't have some flashy job or billionaire lifestyle. He drove a 5-year-old Subaru, owned a small condo near downtown Denver, and spent more money on hiking gear than anything fashionable. What I liked about him was how steady he was. If he said he'd pick me up at 7, he was outside at 6:58. If we argued, he didn't disappear for 3 days or send vague social media posts. He wanted to sit down, talk, and solve the problem. We'd been together almost 3 years by the time the dinner table photo happened. I introduced him to my family about 4 months after we started dating. Vanessa was friendly in a way I initially appreciated. She asked about his work, where he went to school, what he liked doing on weekends. Caleb is quiet around new people, so I was relieved someone was helping the conversation. I didn't notice the pattern until later. The first strange thing was sports. Caleb follows the Denver Nuggets, but isn't the kind of person who wears team gear everywhere. One night at dinner, he mentioned wanting to go to a playoff game someday. The next family gathering, Vanessa showed up in a Nuggets sweatshirt. She said she'd always liked basketball. I knew that wasn't true, but it was harmless enough. Then I mentioned Caleb had gotten into bourbon after a coworker took him to a tasting. Vanessa bought him a bottle for his birthday. It wasn't just any bottle, it was the exact brand Caleb had told me he wanted to try. I assumed Mom had mentioned it. Then Vanessa started remembering tiny details I barely remembered telling her. His favorite coffee order. The trail he liked outside Boulder. The kind of music he played while cooking. At first, Caleb thought it was funny. "Your sister has a scary memory," he told me once. I laughed, but something about it bothered me. Vanessa wasn't remembering details about everyone. She was remembering details about him. The first time Caleb noticed it too was at my father's birthday dinner. I had to work late because our team was finishing a client presentation. I told everyone to start without me. I got to my parents' house about 40 minutes late. Caleb was in the kitchen helping my dad open wine. Vanessa was standing beside him, closer than she needed to be. She moved when she saw me. Nothing happened. No touching, no whispering, no obvious flirting. But on the drive home, Caleb was quiet. I asked what was wrong. He said Vanessa had spent most of the time before I arrived asking questions about our relationship, how often we fought, whether I stayed at his place most nights, whether we'd talked about marriage. Then she'd said, "Emma can get distracted when work gets busy. Don't let her make you feel like you're not important." Caleb told me he'd laughed awkwardly and changed the subject. I told myself Vanessa was being nosy. She'd always been nosy. Then she started texting him. The first message looked innocent. Hey, do you know what Emma wants for Christmas? She's impossible to shop for. Caleb answered with 2 ideas. A week later, she sent him a photo of a restaurant asking if we'd been there because she needed date ideas. Then she sent him a joke about engineers. He responded with a thumbs up. After that, she started asking questions that had nothing to do with gifts or restaurants. Do you ever feel like Emma doesn't listen when you talk about work? Does she still stay late all the time? Do you guys ever take breaks from each other? Caleb didn't answer those. He showed me the messages and asked if I wanted him to block her. I said not yet. I wanted to talk to her first, because even then, part of me was still afraid of looking jealous. That was a mistake I'd think about a lot later. I called Vanessa the next afternoon. I kept my voice calm and told her I didn't like her asking Caleb private questions about our relationship. She laughed. Private. I asked if you work late. Half the family knows you work late. I said that wasn't the point. She was messaging my boyfriend in a way that made both of us uncomfortable. Her tone changed instantly. Both of you. Or just you. I asked what that was supposed to mean. She said, nothing. You're just doing that thing where you get weird when I get along with people. I almost hung up. Then she added, relax, Emma. I don't want your boyfriend. The word "your" bothered me more than it should have. She said it like Caleb was a purse I was accusing her of stealing. I told her to stop messaging him unless it was about something practical. She said, fine, if that makes you feel secure. 2 days later, Caleb got another message. This one said, can I ask you something without Emma getting mad? Caleb didn't respond. 10 minutes later, another message came through. I think she might be seeing someone from work. Then Vanessa sent him a blurry photo of me standing outside my office building with a man. The man was Daniel, a married coworker in his 50s who'd been waiting for the same rideshare. The photo was taken from across the street. Caleb called me immediately. I remember looking at the picture and feeling something colder than anger. Vanessa had not happened to see me. Her office was 20 minutes in the other direction. She'd either been near my building for some reason or someone had sent the photo to her. I asked Caleb not to respond yet. I texted Vanessa one sentence. Why do you have a picture of me outside my office? She called within 30 seconds. Her explanation was that a friend had seen me downtown and sent it because she thought it was funny that I looked secretive. I asked which friend. Vanessa said I didn't know her. I asked for the friend's name. She got irritated. Why does it matter? If you're not doing anything, who cares? Then she turned it into concern. She said she knew Caleb was serious about me, and she didn't want him getting hurt. She reminded me that I'd once complained about feeling disconnected from Caleb during a busy month at work. That had been almost a year earlier. Suddenly, she was using it like evidence. When I told her to stay out of my relationship, she said, I'm not in your relationship. That's the point. Then she hung up. For about 2 weeks, nothing happened. Caleb blocked Vanessa's number and social media accounts. I didn't tell my parents because I knew exactly what my mother would say. Vanessa was dramatic. Vanessa got carried away. Vanessa probably thought she was helping. I didn't want a family summit over a few messages. I wanted it to die quietly. Then our quarterly team dinner happened. Someone from work posted a group photo to Instagram. I wasn't tagged, but my company was. Vanessa must have found it through the public account. She cropped the photo until it showed only me and my new director sitting beside each other. Then she sent it to Caleb from a new number. That's the picture that ended up on my parents' dining room table. I finally told my parents because I was tired of Vanessa controlling what version of the story reached them first. I brought Caleb with me and asked Vanessa to come over. I thought if everyone heard the same facts at the same time, there'd be less room for her to twist them. I underestimated her. She didn't deny sending the photo. She didn't deny the earlier messages either. She said she'd become concerned because I was emotionally checked out of my relationship. When my dad asked what made her think that, Vanessa listed things I'd told my mother over the past year. I'd worked late. Caleb and I had argued about holiday plans. I'd once gone to a coworker's birthday without him. Normal relationship things became evidence in her mouth. My mother looked uncomfortable. Vanessa, you should have come to Emma first. Vanessa shook her head. And if she really was doing something, she'd just lie to me. I asked why she thought Caleb would trust her more than me. That's when she looked at him. Not at me, at him. Because I would tell you the truth, even if it made me look bad. Caleb stared back at her for a second and said, you sent me a cropped photo and pretended it showed something it didn't. That is the opposite of telling the truth. Vanessa flushed. I felt a tiny wave of relief. Then my mother did exactly what I'd been afraid she'd do. Okay, everyone needs to calm down. Vanessa crossed a line, but I don't think she was trying to destroy anyone's relationship. I asked what exactly it would look like if she were trying. Vanessa leaned back in her chair. This is why I didn't want to say anything. You always think I'm competing with you. I laughed because it was so ridiculous. You are literally messaging my boyfriend and sending him fake cheating evidence. She rolled her eyes. Fake. The picture is real. My father finally snapped. The crop is fake, Vanessa. You know what you were making it look like. She went quiet for maybe 5 seconds. Then she said, fine, I made a bad call. But why is Emma so threatened by me? Caleb is a grown man. If your relationship is solid, what do you think I'm going to do? Steal him? The room went silent. Vanessa smiled like she'd proved something. Caleb stood up and said he was leaving. I went with him. In the car, I apologized. Caleb asked why. I said I was sorry my family dragged him into something so stupid. He said, "This isn't stupid. Your sister is trying to make me doubt you." Then he said something I hadn't let myself say yet. "I think she wants me to like her." I stared out the window. He continued before I could answer. "I'm not saying that because I think I'm irresistible. I'm saying it because every message is built around the same idea. You're too busy. You don't listen. You don't appreciate me. She does." I felt embarrassed by how obvious it sounded when he said it out loud. I told him Vanessa had denied wanting him. Caleb said, "People deny things." Then he reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'm blocking every new number. If anything else comes through, I show you. No secrets." That should have made me feel better. It did, for a few days. Then Morgan sent me a photo that made my stomach drop. Morgan works 3 desks away from me and has been one of my closest friends for 5 years. She knew the situation because she'd seen me shaking after Vanessa sent the first photo outside my office. One Wednesday afternoon, Morgan left early for a dentist appointment. Around 4, she texted, "Don't freak out, but is Vanessa near Caleb's office today?" I told her I had no idea. She sent a picture taken through the window of a coffee shop. Caleb was standing near the counter talking to a woman with long dark hair. The woman's back was to the camera. She was wearing a tan coat Vanessa owned. Same build, same hair. I stared at the picture until my eyes hurt. Vanessa had posted that morning about driving to Colorado Springs for a job interview. If the woman was her, then she was lying about where she was. More importantly, Caleb had told me he was staying late for a project meeting. My hands went cold. For the first time, a thought I hated entered my head. What if Caleb had not told me everything? What if Vanessa had been pushing so hard because at some point he'd encouraged her? I hated myself for thinking it, but once the thought appeared, it wouldn't leave. I didn't call him screaming. I waited until he got home. He noticed something was wrong immediately. I asked, "Who did you have coffee with today?" He didn't hesitate. "No one." "Why?" I showed him the photo. He looked at it for 2 seconds and laughed once. Not because it was funny, but because he was shocked. "That's Priya." Priya was a supplier representative I'd heard him mention before. He opened his work messages and showed me a thread from that afternoon. Priya had stopped by to drop off revised drawings. They'd walked downstairs because the conference room coffee machine was broken. He even had a calendar invite with her full name and company. I still felt sick. The coat, the hair, the height. Morgan called and apologized over and over. Caleb told her she had nothing to apologize for. Then he looked at me and said, "This is what Vanessa is doing to you. Now every woman with dark hair is her." I started crying, which made me feel even more ridiculous. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the last month and wondering whether I'd become exactly what Vanessa kept calling me: jealous, insecure, paranoid. Caleb didn't tell me to stop thinking about it. He just said, "You were wrong about one picture. That doesn't make the other things disappear." It was a simple sentence, but I needed it. One mistake didn't erase the cropped photo, the messages, or the questions Vanessa had been asking him. Still, I decided I wouldn't accuse her of anything else unless I had proof. I didn't know that proof was already sitting in someone else's phone. 3 nights later, at 11:14, I got a message from Emily. Emily had been Vanessa's closest friend since college. I knew her well enough to say hello at parties, but we'd never texted one-on-one. Her first message was, "Are you awake?" I almost ignored it because I was tired. Then she sent another one. "I think Vanessa has been lying to both of us." I sat up in bed. Caleb was reading beside me and looked over when he saw my face. I typed, "About what?" The little typing dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, Emily wrote, "Caleb and you." She asked if she could call. Her voice was shaking when I answered. She said Vanessa had been talking about Caleb for months, but Emily believed it was just a crush Vanessa would get over. Vanessa told her Caleb and I were having problems. She said I ignored him, canceled plans, and cared more about work than our relationship. According to Vanessa, Caleb had started confiding in her because he felt lonely. Emily believed that part too. She had no reason not to. Vanessa showed her screenshots of conversations with Caleb. The problem was that Emily had finally noticed something weird about them. Every screenshot cut off the dates and most of Caleb's replies. Some were real messages from months earlier about Christmas gifts and restaurants. Vanessa had arranged them to look recent and more intimate. Then Emily said, "There's more. I should have told you earlier." She started sending screenshots from their own chat. The first few made me angry but didn't surprise me. Vanessa wrote that Caleb was too good for Emma. She said I treated him like furniture because I assumed he'd always be there. She told Emily she could make him happier. Then the screenshots got stranger. Vanessa had asked Emily what nights I usually worked late. Emily had once answered, because she thought Vanessa was planning a surprise dinner for me. Vanessa asked whether Caleb still went to a Thursday climbing class. She asked which coffee shop was closest to his office. She'd been gathering pieces of our routines from different people while making each question sound harmless. I kept scrolling. Caleb was reading over my shoulder. One message from 2 months earlier said, "If I just get time with him without Emma hovering, he'll see the difference." Emily replied, "Do you actually like him that much?" Vanessa's answer took up one line. "I don't even know if I'd keep him. I just need him to pick me once." I read it 3 times. Caleb went completely still beside me. Something inside me clicked into place so hard it almost felt physical. I thought about the camera when we were kids. Vanessa didn't become a photographer. She wanted the better camera because mine made me happy. I thought about the school newspaper. She didn't care about writing after graduation. She cared that teachers praised me for something. The internship. My friends. Clothes she copied and stopped wearing. It had never really been about the thing. It was about the comparison. Caleb was just the biggest possible comparison because he could choose. Emily kept apologizing. She said she'd confronted Vanessa that afternoon after hearing from a mutual friend about the cropped restaurant photo. Vanessa got angry and accused Emily of taking my side. Emily asked directly whether she'd sent the fake cheating picture. Vanessa admitted it and said she was creating pressure. Emily told her it was insane. Vanessa replied, "You don't get it. It's a girl. Emma always wins because everyone acts like she doesn't care about winning." That sentence hurt more than the others because I suddenly understood something I'd never been able to name. Vanessa had spent years competing with someone who wasn't competing back, and my refusal to play had made her more determined, not less. I asked Emily why she was telling me now. She was quiet for a second. Then she said Vanessa had asked her to help with something that crossed a line even for her. She wanted Emily to send Caleb a message from a fake Instagram account, pretending to be a man from my office. The plan was to imply that I'd been flirting with him. Emily refused. Vanessa called her disloyal and said she'd do it herself. Emily realized then that this wasn't a crush, it was a campaign. I thanked her and asked if I could keep the screenshots. She said yes. Then she asked me not to post them publicly because she didn't want strangers involved. I agreed. When the call ended, Caleb asked what I wanted to do. My first instinct was to send everything to my parents. My second was to drive to Vanessa's apartment and demand an explanation. Instead, I did something that surprised both of us. I said, "Nothing tonight." I was tired of reacting whenever Vanessa threw something into my life. For the first time, I wanted her to talk before she knew what I had. My mother invited us to dinner the following Sunday. She said she wanted everyone to reset. I almost laughed when I heard the word. Vanessa had apparently told her she regretted sending the restaurant photo and wanted to move on. I said we'd come if Vanessa came too. Caleb asked if I was sure. I told him I was. Before we left, I printed 3 screenshots, not 30. 3. The first showed Vanessa saying Caleb would be better with her. The second showed her asking Emily about my work schedule. The third was the line about not knowing if she'd keep him and just needing him to pick her once. Dinner was painfully normal for the first 20 minutes. My father grilled chicken. My mother talked about a neighbor's new fence. Vanessa asked Caleb how work was going like they were casual friends. Caleb gave her one-word answers. Finally, my mother said she was glad we were all together because she hated tension in the family. Vanessa sighed and said, "I already apologized for the photo. I don't know what else Emma wants." I put my fork down. "I want to make sure I understand you. You never wanted Caleb." Vanessa looked annoyed. "How many times are we going to do this? Just answer." "No, I don't want your boyfriend. You've never tried to get him to choose you over me." She laughed. "That is such a weird way to phrase it." "Of course not." I said, "Good." Then I slid the 3 printed screenshots across the table. My mother picked up the first page. Vanessa's face changed before Mom finished reading. Not panic, calculation. She looked at Emily's name at the top and said, "Are you serious?" Emily has been obsessed with making me look bad for months. I hadn't told Vanessa Emily was the source. She just confirmed it herself. My father noticed too. "How did you know these were from Emily?" he asked. Vanessa froze. Then she said the screenshots were probably edited. I asked which part. She said the context was missing. I asked what context would make "I just need him to pick me once" mean something different. She said she'd been venting. Then she said Emily had always been jealous of our family. Then she said I'd probably pressured Emily into sending private conversations. The explanations changed every 30 seconds. My mother looked sick. "Vanessa, did you ask Emily to make a fake account and message Caleb?" "No. Emily says you did. So now Emily is some perfect witness. You don't even know her." "I've known her for 8 years," Mom said. Vanessa turned toward me. "You love this, don't you?" I honestly didn't know what she meant. Love what? Finally getting everyone on your side. My father slammed his hand on the table hard enough to make the glasses jump. "Stop. This is not about sides. You tried to interfere in your sister's relationship. You lied about it. Then you tried to make her look unfaithful." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears, but she looked angry, not sad. She always gets everything. Nobody spoke. There it was. Not Caleb's name. Not love. Not concern. Everything. My mother whispered, "What does that mean?" Vanessa stood up so fast her chair scraped across the floor. "Nothing. Forget it." She grabbed her purse. My father told her not to leave until they finished talking. Vanessa said, "I'm 28. You don't get to tell me when I can leave." Then she looked at Caleb. "And congratulations, you picked the safe one." Caleb said, "This isn't a contest." Vanessa laughed once and walked out. For about a week, I felt lighter. My parents finally understood enough that they stopped asking me to forgive her. Emily blocked Vanessa. Caleb blocked every new account that contacted him. I muted most of my social media and told myself the worst part was probably over. Then I saw a red SUV outside my apartment building 3 mornings in a row. Vanessa drove a red SUV, same general size, same color. On the 3rd morning I called Morgan and told her I thought Vanessa was watching my building. Morgan came over after work. We sat in her car across the street like two terrible detectives. The SOA was still there. I'd already started making a list in my head. Why would Vanessa sit outside for hours? Was she trying to see when Caleb came over? Did she know my schedule? 20 minutes later, a man in scrubs came out of the building next door, unlocked the SUV, and drove away. I wanted to disappear into the seat. Morgan didn't laugh. She said, "You know what this means, right? That I'm losing my mind." "No, it means you're scared." I looked at her. She said, "Vanessa spent weeks making normal things feel suspicious. That's gonna take time to undo." I started crying again, which I was getting tired of doing. I told her I hated that Vanessa was still controlling how I saw things even when she wasn't there. Morgan said, "Then make a rule. No conclusions without evidence." It was almost exactly what I told myself after the coffee shop photo. This time I wrote it down in my notes app, "No conclusions without evidence." That rule helped for the next 2 weeks. It also made what happened after that harder to dismiss. I bought new curtains on a Saturday because my old ones had faded from the afternoon sun. They were navy blue, heavier than the old beige ones. Caleb complained that I'd somehow turned hanging curtains into a 3-hour project. Morgan came by with takeout and helped us get the last rod level. I didn't post pictures. I didn't mention them to my parents. It was just curtains. 4 days later, a small package was waiting outside my apartment door when I got home. It wasn't mailed. There was no shipping label. Inside was a cheap glass candle holder wrapped in tissue paper and a card with no name. The card said, "Blue suits the room better." I stood in the hallway for so long the motion light turned off. My first thought was Vanessa. My second thought was the rule, no conclusions without evidence. I called Caleb before I touched anything else. He came over and read the card. His face went tight. We went through every possible explanation. Morgan knew about the curtains. Maybe she told someone. She swore she hadn't. Caleb knew. My apartment manager had seen me carrying the package from the car, but she didn't know Vanessa. I'd ordered the curtains online, but the order wasn't public. My mother didn't know. My father didn't know. I checked every photo I'd posted that week. Nothing. For the first time, I felt afraid in a way that was different from anger. The messages to Caleb had been invasive, but they were about our relationship. The card was about the inside of my home. I took it to the apartment manager the next morning and asked if the hallway cameras showed who left it. My building only had cameras at the main entrance and garage, not on every floor. She checked the afternoon and evening footage. There were dozens of residents, delivery drivers, dog walkers, and guests. Nobody obviously looked like Vanessa. The manager offered to flag her name at the front desk if I sent a photo. I did. I didn't call the police because I had a card and a candle holder, not evidence of a crime. That frustrated me, but it was also true. My mother called that evening. I hadn't planned to tell her, but she heard something in my voice. When I explained the card, she went quiet. Then she said, "Vanessa was here Sunday." Every muscle in my body tensed. Mom said Vanessa had come by to pick up a box of old clothes from the basement. They'd barely spoken. Vanessa was still furious about the dinner. Mom didn't know anything about my curtains, though. I asked whether she'd shown Vanessa any pictures from my apartment. She said no. I asked if she'd mentioned Morgan helping me. No. That night I checked my doors twice before bed. Caleb stayed over. Around 2 in the morning, I woke up and saw him standing in the living room looking through the blinds. "What are you doing?" I asked. He said he heard a car door. It was our upstairs neighbor coming home. We both laughed a little, but neither of us thought it was funny. 2 days later, Nathan messaged me on Facebook. I hadn't heard Nathan's name in years. He dated Vanessa in college for a little over a year. Their breakup was ugly, according to Vanessa. She said he was controlling and jealous. I'd met him maybe 4 times and remembered almost nothing except that he was tall and quiet. His message said, "Emily told me some of what's happening. I don't want to get involved in family stuff, but there's something I think you should know." We talked on the phone that night. Nathan was careful about what he said. He didn't call Vanessa crazy. He didn't say she'd stalked him or committed crimes. He said the thing that made their relationship exhausting was how often I somehow became part of it. At first I thought I'd heard him wrong. He said Vanessa constantly asked him to compare us. Who was prettier? Who was funnier? Who had better career prospects? If he complimented my job after a family event, Vanessa got angry. Once, after I helped them move apartments, Nathan thanked me for being organized. Vanessa didn't speak to him for the rest of the night. He said, "I started avoiding saying your name because every conversation became a test." I sat at my kitchen table with the phone pressed to my ear. Nathan told me the strangest part happened after they broke up. He started spending more time with his best friend, Evan. Vanessa had always called Evan immature and annoying. 2 weeks after the breakup, she started messaging him. She flirted. She invited him to drinks. Evan told Nathan because it felt wrong. Nathan confronted her, expecting her to say she liked Evan. Instead, she laughed and said, "I just wanted to see if your people would pick me too." I stopped breathing for a second. Nathan said he didn't understand it at the time. Neither did I until now. He continued, "I don't think she wanted Evan. I think she wanted proof that she could still get something connected to me." I told him about the screenshot Emily sent where Vanessa said she didn't know if she'd keep Caleb and just needed him to pick her once. Nathan was silent. Then he said, "That sounds exactly like her." The call didn't prove Vanessa left the card. It didn't prove anything about my apartment. But it confirmed something more important. This pattern had existed long before Caleb. The next day, Brooke contacted me. Brooke and I went to high school together. We hadn't spoken in maybe 8 years. She said Emily had reached out to a few people because she was trying to understand whether Vanessa had done similar things before. Brooke didn't have some dramatic criminal story either. What she had was almost worse because it was so ordinary. During senior year, Brooke dated a guy named Chris. At some point, a rumor spread that they had an open relationship. Random girls started messaging Chris because they thought Brooke didn't care. Brooke was humiliated. She and Chris fought constantly and eventually broke up. Years later, another friend admitted Vanessa had been the first person she heard the rumor from. Vanessa had apparently told people Brooke liked sharing and wouldn't mind. Brooke never confronted her because by then high school was over and everyone had moved on. Why would she do that? I asked. Brooke said, I don't know. But she had a crush on Chris for about 5 minutes before I dated him. I don't even think she liked him after that. She just hated that he liked me. After we hung up, I sat there looking at the notes I'd made. Camera, newspaper, internship, Nathan, Evan, Brooke, Chris, Caleb. Different years, different people, same pattern. Vanessa didn't always want the person or thing. She wanted to prove she could change who got chosen. That's when I stopped thinking of Caleb as the center of the story. He wasn't. Neither was I, exactly. Vanessa had built a private scoreboard in her head years ago, and everyone else had been turned into points. I started seeing a therapist after the Red Stove incident because I hated how easily fear was controlling me. When I told her about Vanessa, she didn't diagnose my sister or try to explain her personality from stories she'd never witnessed. She kept asking what I could control. At one appointment, she asked what would happen if I stopped trying to prove I was right about Vanessa. I said I didn't understand. She said, what if you make decisions based on what you need to feel safe, not on whether your family agrees with your interpretation? That bothered me because I'd spent my entire life explaining Vanessa to people. Why I didn't tell her things, why certain comments bothered me, why I didn't want to be compared. I was used to needing a jury, so I tried something different. I told my parents I was taking space from Vanessa indefinitely. I wasn't asking them to stop seeing her. I wasn't asking them to call her a bad person. I simply wouldn't attend events where she was present, and I didn't want them sharing details about my schedule, relationship, apartment, or work. My mother cried. My father said he understood. Mom asked how long, indefinitely, meant. I said, it means I don't know. Vanessa found out within 2 days. A new Instagram account messaged me, running away from family won't fix your relationship. I blocked it. Another account appeared the next morning. You think changing your routine makes you interesting. I blocked that too. The messages were annoying, but they weren't specific enough to prove anything. Then one arrived that said, Bellevue is not far enough. I don't live in Washington. Bellevue meant nothing to me until I remembered a conversation with my mother 3 days earlier. I decided to test information, not Vanessa. I told my mother that Caleb had been approached about a job in Bellevue and we were quietly considering a move. It was completely false. I told Emily we might move to Tacoma. I told a cousin I trusted that we were just looking at another neighborhood in Denver. I asked all 3 people not to mention it to Vanessa. Now an anonymous account had named Bellevue. My first reaction was betrayal. I called my mother and asked whether she'd told Vanessa. She swore she hadn't. We went through the last few days. Vanessa had been at her house once to pick up mail. Mom said they barely spoke. Then, she remembered something. I'd texted Mom about Bellevue while she was cooking. Her phone had been on the kitchen counter. Vanessa arrived about 10 minutes later. Mom went upstairs to get the mail she'd saved for her. Her phone stayed on the counter. Was the message visible? I asked. Mom started crying. She didn't know. It wasn't hacking. It wasn't some elaborate plan. Vanessa may have simply looked at a notification on an unlocked screen. That possibility was somehow more believable and more disturbing. Then I remembered the blue curtains. I spent the next hour going through my mother's messages and our family group chat. 4 days before the candle holder appeared, I'd sent Mom a screenshot of a furniture order because she asked where I bought a side table. I'd forgotten that the browser page in the screenshot showed my recently viewed items along the bottom. One tiny square was the navy curtains. Vanessa was still in the family group at the time. I stared at the screenshot and almost laughed. The mystery was over. Vanessa had not been inside my apartment. She'd not hired someone to spy through my windows. She'd looked at a tiny product image and used it to make me think she knew more than she did. Caleb looked relieved and angry at the same time when I showed him. I told him I was relieved too. Then I said, do you realize how much effort she puts into noticing things nobody else notices? He said, that's because we're living our lives and she's collecting information. That sentence stayed with me. I removed Vanessa from the family group. My mother changed her phone passcode and turned off message previews on the lock screen. It felt ridiculous to need those precautions because of my sister, but it also felt good to solve a problem with something simple instead of imagining something worse. For almost a month, nothing happened. Caleb and I took a weekend trip to Santa Fe. We only told Morgan where we were going. I started sleeping better. My parents saw Vanessa separately and stopped updating me about what she was doing. Emily said Vanessa had cut her off completely. I was fine with that. I didn't need reports. Then Caleb's company held its annual charity reception. It was a boring professional event. Local contractors, engineers, city staff, clients, spouses, and appetizers that were never quite enough food. Caleb invited me every year. The guest list wasn't public, but the event itself wasn't a secret. Employees received invitations and could bring one guest. I almost didn't go because I had a deadline Monday morning. Then I realized I was once again arranging my life around what Vanessa might do, so I went. For the first hour, everything was normal. Caleb introduced me to new coworkers. I talked to his boss about a restaurant near our office. I was standing near the bar with Morgan when I saw Caleb's expression change. He was looking past me. I turned around. Vanessa was walking across the ballroom in a black dress and blazer, carrying a glass of sparkling water like she belonged there. My body reacted before my brain did. My stomach tightened. My hands went cold. Then I remembered the rule. No conclusions without evidence. I asked Morgan, "Do you see her?" She said, "Les." That was enough. Caleb walked over. "Did you invite her?" "No." We went to the registration table instead of confronting her. A staff member checked the list and found Vanessa's name, written under an employee named Marcus Hale. Caleb knew Marcus from another department. Marcus came over and looked completely confused. He said he'd never met Vanessa and had already brought his own guest. Vanessa appeared beside us before anyone asked her to. "This is embarrassing," she said with a little laugh. "There must be a mix-up." The event coordinator asked where she got the invitation. Vanessa said a friend forwarded it. Which friend? She gave the first name of someone Caleb didn't know. The coordinator asked to see the email. Vanessa said her phone was dead. It was such a small, stupid lie. The coordinator told her she wasn't an approved guest and would need to leave. Vanessa looked at me. "Seriously?" I said nothing. She looked at Caleb. "Can I talk to you for 5 minutes?" "No," he said. 5 minutes. No. Her face tightened. "You don't even know what's really going on," Caleb said. "I know enough." "You don't know her the way I do." He answered. "That's exactly why I'm with her." Vanessa flinched. Then she looked at me. "You love making me look insane." "I haven't said anything." "That's your whole thing. You stand there acting calm while everyone else does your dirty work." The coordinator told her again that she needed to leave. Vanessa's face went red. "She always gets everything." The same words from my parents' dinner table. Caleb looked at her and said, "I'm not something she got." For 1 second, Vanessa looked genuinely confused. Then she laughed. "Please. Men always say that when they want to pretend they're not making a choice." Caleb said, "I am making a choice. I'm choosing not to have this conversation." Security escorted her out. I stood there shaking after she was gone. Morgan asked if I wanted to leave. I almost said yes. Then I looked around the ballroom. People were still talking. Someone had started a speech near the stage. A server walked past with crab cakes. Vanessa had entered a room she wasn't invited into, caused a scene, and been removed. She'd not destroyed the event. She'd not destroyed my relationship. I said I wanted to stay. We stayed another hour. In the parking garage, my phone started buzzing from a number I didn't recognize. "Hope you're happy. You finally got what you wanted. Mom and Dad barely talked to me because of you. Emily picked you. Nathan probably loved getting involved." That last message stopped me. I'd never told Vanessa Nathan contacted me. I almost started tracing the information again. Then another message arrived. She couldn't let me have one thing. I stared at it. Not, "I love Caleb." Not, "You stole him from me." Not even, "He should be with me." One thing. I took a screenshot and blocked the number. Caleb read it and handed my phone back. There it is. There it was. The sentence I'd spent 20 years trying to understand. The next morning, my father called. Vanessa had gone to my parents' house after the reception and blamed them for letting me turn the family against her. Dad said he finally told her something he should have said years earlier. "Emma having something is not you losing something." Vanessa told him he'd always favored me. Dad admitted he and Mom probably made mistakes, but said that didn't excuse what she'd done. He told her they loved her, but they'd no longer pass messages, defend her behavior, give her information about me, or pressure me to reconcile. My mother got on the phone next. She was crying. Vanessa had asked whether I'd come to Christmas if she apologized. Mom asked if I'd at least consider listening. I felt that old pressure rise in my chest. The instinct to make my mother feel better, to reduce tension, to be the easier daughter. Then I remembered I didn't need a jury. "I love you," I told Mom, "but I'm not discussing contact with Vanessa right now." She cried harder. I didn't change my answer. For the first time in my life, my mother's sadness did not become my assignment. A week later, Vanessa sent a letter through my parents. I left it unopened on my counter for 2 days. When I finally read it, the first paragraph was an apology. She said she was sorry for crossing boundaries and involving Caleb. The second explained that she'd been lonely and insecure. The third said I'd never understood how difficult it was growing up next to someone who always seemed to have things figured out. The fourth asked me to admit that I'd sometimes made her feel inferior. It was the most Vanessa apology possible. "Sorry," followed by a reason, followed by a request that I accept part of the blame. There was one sentence I kept reading. "I know I acted like everything was a competition, but you never made it easy to stop." I almost responded. I wrote 3 different messages and deleted all of them. Finally, I put the letter in a folder in my desk. No reply. Months passed. My parents eventually learned how to have separate relationships with us. It was awkward, but possible. If they had dinner with Vanessa, they didn't update me afterward. If I came over, they didn't use it as an opportunity to tell me whether she was doing better. My father apologized for all the years he laughed off things as normal sister rivalry. My mother took longer. She still occasionally said she wished we could be in the same room again. I told her maybe one day, maybe never. She stopped pushing. Emily and I didn't become best friends. That would have felt strange. We stayed in occasional contact. Nathan never contacted me again after our call. Brooke sent me a Christmas card with a picture of her husband and kids. Ordinary endings, I like those. Caleb and I didn't become some perfect couple because of what happened. We still argued about stupid things. He left dishes in the sink. I forgot plans when work got busy. Once we spent an entire Saturday irritated because neither of us wanted to admit we were wrong about which hardware store carried a shelf bracket. That normal conflict became comforting. It reminded me that relationships didn't need villains to have problems, and problems didn't mean someone else was waiting to replace you. About 6 months after the charity reception, Caleb and I decided to move in together. Not because of Vanessa. His lease was ending and my apartment was too small for both of us. We found a 2-bedroom place 15 minutes from my office with a balcony that looked toward the mountains. On moving day, Morgan showed up with coffee and made fun of us for owning 3 different sets of mismatched plates. That afternoon, Caleb opened a box marked living room and pulled out the navy curtains. He held them up and said, "These again." For a second, neither of us spoke. Then I started laughing, not nervous laughter, real laughter. Caleb smiled. "Too soon." "No," I said, "hang them." So we did. That night, after everyone left, I stood in the new living room looking at those stupid blue curtains. For months, the color had reminded me of Vanessa. A tiny detail she'd found and turned into proof that she could still reach into my life. Now they were just curtains again. I used to think the only way to deal with Vanessa was to beat her at whatever game she'd started. Prove I was more reasonable. Prove Caleb trusted me. Prove the screenshots were real. Prove the photo was cropped. Prove she was lying. Every time I proved one thing, she created another contest. It took me 30 years to understand that winning was never going to make her stop. So I stopped playing. Vanessa could compare jobs, relationships, apartments, friends, attention, whatever she wanted. She could keep a scoreboard for the rest of her life if that was what she needed. I didn't need to see it anymore. Caleb came up behind me and asked what I was thinking about. I told him, nothing important. And for the first time, that was true.